Chapter 20. Non-Earthly Realms of Energy. A strange mood overtook all of us, as if we knew that soon everyone would be going their separate ways again for a while. The next morning we all had breakfast together out in the patio, and Juan announced that he had dreamed he should be getting back to southern Mexico. Everyone nodded in silence, each one's eyes reflecting their own inner knowing. Doña Celestina thanked him for all that he had done for her clients and invited him to return the next time he felt that it was appropriate. She told him that he was always welcome and she hoped that he would come back to San Luis again soon. Juan asked me if I would be willing to drive him to the town of Mexicali so that he could catch the afternoon train for Mexico City. Don Juan suggested that this would be a good opportunity for us to return to Pozo together, since Mexicali was on the way, approximately half the distance between Pozo and San Luis. I agreed, feeling a tinge of sentimentality that the three of us would be departing within a few hours. After the decision had been made, our mood changed to that of levity, and we all enjoyed second helpings of coffee and chilaquiles, a casserole made of shredded chicken, crumbled corn tortillas, onions, chili sauce, and cheese. The morning was cloudless, with a fresh easterly breeze, and the sun shone dazzling and brilliant, yet mild. Juan joked that he could probably look forward to another month of rain when he arrived in the area of San Cristobal de las Casas, which is where he would be until the spring. He said that he didn't know if the brim of his hat would endure even one more deluge, and made hilarious gestures, imitating how he would look with a soggy hat and head. We talked, laughed, and lingered at the table until necessity obliged us to attend to our own affairs. Juan and Don Juan set themselves to packing up any things that they would be bringing with them. I did the same. Doña Celestina went to her consultation room, and the four girls cleaned and cleared the patio area, dining table, and the kitchen. After I had finished my packing, I went to Doña Celestina's altar room to say goodbye to her and thank her privately. She was not in consultation, but rather simply sitting at her altar table, deep in thought, with the sun streaming through the open window. "I wanted to thank you for everything, Doña," I said to her after tapping at the open door and requesting permission to enter. She nodded, as if it all had been merely a matter of course. "Come in, Merlina. I'll see you on the Cocopa reservation in a few months," she said. "There's going to be a ceremony I'll be attending. You've done very good work here, my dear. But don't think that you're finished yet. Juan has more in store for you after the two of you get back to Pozo." I swallowed my apprehension. "Thank you for having me in your home," I said to her sincerely. "I can't tell you how much I've learned." "You don't have to tell me, but be sure to tell someone," she joked, cracking a sly smile. "I still see you becoming a storyteller, Merlina." She stood up from her mesa, put her arm approvingly around my shoulder, and walked me out to the passageway. These sorcerers definitely did not stand on sentimentality or ceremony. When everyone was packed and it was time to leave, we simply exchanged words of respect and thanks once again, and left. We made our way out to my waiting jeep, carrying our things. Juan placed his belongings in the back seat beside him, and Don Juan and I got into the front. Within moments we were off, slowly rolling down the narrow, sandy streets of San Luis, a cloud of dust behind us. The ride to Mexicali lasted about 1 hour. Juan and Don Juan laughed and told stories most of the way, mainly about acquaintances of theirs that I had never met. I was glad for the opportunity just to listen and drive, and not to feel it necessary to contribute anything to the discussion. Driving with either one of them could become otherworldly in a heartbeat, and I needed all my attention for the road, so as not to miss crucial turns or take the wrong exits. We arrived at the train station with time to spare. Juan unloaded his gear and sacks of desert plants. I took note of how much gear still remained in the jeep. Evidently the rest had been packed by Don Juan. It seemed to be much more than we had brought with us, and looked as though someone were planning to camp for several days. There were water bottles, blankets, and other items that I hadn't noticed before, since Chan's items had been placed on top of them. I considered curiously the possible reasons for hauling these things with us, but I didn't have much time to devote my attention to it, since we needed to wait in line to purchase Chan's tickets. I got out some mineral water so that we wouldn't be thirsty during the wait, and we chatted in line for over an hour. Finally, we were able to buy Chan a ticket and could sit down on a bench in the station to await the train's departure. Once we were comfortable, Chan started rummaging through his things. "I have something for you," he said to me. Moments later, he smiled with satisfaction and pulled out his Highland straw hat, decorated with long strands of multicolored ribbon. Chan presented the hat to me with satisfaction. It was a work of art, a true collector's piece, complete with a little point at the top and a horsehair tassel in the back. "It won't stand even one more rain," he joked. I joyously accepted the beautiful hat. It was brimming with Chan's energy and personality. Suddenly, though, I had the strangest thought. I recalled Don Juan's story of the gift of blankets from the sorcerer Melchior Angelo. I inspected the hat with a newfound interest, wondering if Chan's energy body might perhaps be hiding somewhere within it. That sent Chan and Don Juan into fits of howling laughter, a ruckus so loud, in fact, that I had to desist so that they would calm down. I thanked Chan for the present. "That's just so that I can keep an eye on you until I see you again," he said to me with a wink and a shake of his finger. He turned to Don Juan, and their goodbye might have been that of lifelong friends who would see one another again in 15 minutes around the corner. I was quite moved by their dignity and unspoken affection for each other, their casual manner and the profound trust that ran between them. When Chan's train began to board, we were hard-pressed to put him on it. He got himself a window seat and looked as happy as could be at the prospect of his long journey. We stood on the platform watching him through the window after we'd helped him load his things aboard, and then his train pulled out of the station. It was a surreal moment, filled with the portent and ultimate nature of a mysterious journey. Don Juan said to me as we walked out of the station, "Whenever anyone I know is not with me, especially if it is someone I care for, I always see them journeying into the infinite." It was a fitting and worthy tribute, and it made our departure a bit easier. We still had more of a drive ahead of us. We were fortunate, for the afternoon was as clear and lovely as the morning had been. Don Juan settled back to enjoy the ride. We were heading south from Mexicali in the direction of Pozo, but when we reached the dirt road that would take us west toward the town, he instructed me to keep on driving south. "We're not going directly back to my place?" "We're not going directly back to my place," Don Juan told me. "Are we going to camp somewhere?" I asked, finally having an opportunity to mention all the extra gear in the back of the Jeep. "I'm going to take you to a power spot I know. We'll spend a few nights. There are things I have to show you that can only be learned at such a place," he said. I knew that he had prepared the trip in advance, and that this was what Doña Celestina had referred to when she told me that Don Juan had more in store. I relaxed into the drive, knowing that Don Juan would give me directions at the proper time. I was very glad that I had filled the Jeep with gasoline in Mexicali, because we traveled quite a way further. We had driven south almost all of the way to Santa Rosalia, and we were nearing the middle of the Baja Peninsula, before Don Juan told me to take a westerly turn into the Sierra de Guadalupe mountains. We then drove steadily into the range and took several more turnoffs before we reached a place where Don Juan said it would be good to park the vehicle. "This is painted cave territory," he told me. "Some of the most massive are near here. This area used to belong to the Kumai Indians, but other desert groups also conducted vision and dream quests in some of these sacred sites. Is that why we are in this area, Don Juan? Sometimes, he said. If a practitioner builds enough energy, their capacity for transformation exceeds the limitations of the earth and of their age and their human body. They exceed the capacity of their own body for metamorphosis. What happens then? I asked him. Don Juan looked at me firmly, as if I already knew the answer to that question. They rely upon the development of their energy body at the point, he said finally after a long pause. They move into non-human and non-earthly realms. This is why I have chosen to bring you to such a place. Here we are going to see beyond the human. Treat every step you take here as not of this earth. With that, Don Juan opened the door on his side and got out. Practice 20. Seeing human and non-human energy. 1. Select a spot where you can remove yourself from view and observe passerby undisturbed, such as a local square or a small park. Seat yourself, perhaps on a bench out of the way, and silence your mind. Let go of all your thoughts and descriptions of reality. 2. Breathe deeply, expanding your abdomen on the inhale. Relax your body and your gaze. Try not to allow internal dialogue to tether your perceptions. 3. Soften your focus and view the passerby with inner silence. Do not describe them to yourself in any way. See if you can suspend the deeply embedded program that describes them to you as human beings within a human civilization. Merely gaze upon them with a soft focus, as though they were a phenomena never before seen by your eyes. 4. Suspending their description thusly, see if you can achieve a glimpse of the radiant life force that animates them. Move your gaze to other items within your visual field and compare the differences. Gaze upon other human beings, animals, plants, and trees, following the same procedure. Suspend their description. Can you perceive variations rather than merely utilizing descriptive glosses or definitions? Also include objects in your gaze, such as street lamps or fountains. De-objectify them. How is the energy of each different? How is it the same? 5. Attempt to view everything just as energy, not as animate or inanimate. Ascertain differences not based upon preconceived concepts, but rather based upon the faculty of pure perception. Try feeling the world with your eyes. The results may surprise you. It is very renewing and beneficial to the body and the mind to relax imposed structures or consensus agreements and see in this way. Chapter 21. The Death Defier. We hiked about a half a mile from where we'd left the Jeep, carrying blanket rolls, water gourds, and packages of dried fruits and meat tied onto our backs with thin rope. Twilight was imminent. We rounded a bend, and I caught sight of our destination. It was a huge open-mouthed cave with gigantic red and black figures muralized on either side of the entrance and upon all of the stone surfaces surrounding it. Don Juan asked me to go and collect firewood while he went inside the cave to prepare the fire circle. By the time I'd returned, he had unpacked all our gear and placed it deep inside, underneath a large overhang. There was a place cleared for the fire, centrally located inside the cave, but closer to the entrance. "This is how things will work," he said to me, as he arranged the sticks and mesquite branches I had collected in preparation for lighting the fire. "From twilight each night until dawn, you will not speak or make a sound of any kind that is not necessary for your survival. Only my voice will be heard, since the spirits of this place are familiar with me. From sunup until sundown is the time to eat. No food will be consumed after twilight. During the day, you may walk around, but when the sun begins to go down, you are to return to this cave, no matter what. He paused and peered into my eyes to be sure that he was clearly understood. Each night I will build a fire on this spot and call to the energies that surround this place in my own language. You will not know what I am saying, but your energy body should understand. You will gaze into the fire or at the figures painted within this cave until you feel sleepy. Then you will go to your place over there against the cave wall and dream. Your intent will be to dream and nothing more. The energies of this place will do the rest. If you return to normal waking awareness during the night, you must come back to the fire before going again into dreaming. I will be with the fire all night. In the morning, we will be able to talk and we will answer all of your queries. During the afternoon, I'll rest and we will repeat the process over again each night for 3 consecutive nights. He paused again, gazing into my eyes to check my understanding and compliance. It is all right to leave the cave in dreaming during the night, but only in that manner may you exit. I will be seated across the fire from you, facing you, with my back to the entrance to make sure you don't try to run. My eyes must have doubled their size. Don Juan disregarded my apparent apprehension as he ignited a spark. He signaled to me that I should go to the bushes and attend to my bodily functions. I was grateful for the opportunity. I had learned from Don Juan, while conducting other ceremonies in the desert, that restricting the intake to minimal quantities of dried meat and water consumed only during the daylight hours has a twofold purpose. It not only enhances one's ability to enter trance states and dreaming, it also diminishes the need to relieve oneself. The absence of bodily functions is a desirable and necessary byproduct, since it is often not permitted to leave the ceremonial area during the course of the night. By the time I returned, the fire was beginning to blaze. I entered the cave in a stooped position, as Don Juan had taught me to do. Even though the arc of the entrance towered above my head, I had been instructed that bowing, bending, or even crawling is the appropriate form of respect to display when entering sacred womb spaces. I intended to muster all my respect and to show it to the utmost in this otherworldly vortex. I settled into my spot and waited for Don Juan to begin. As soon as it became completely dark, he started chanting. I had heard him sing before, but this did not in any way diminish its powerful effect. His voice became raspy and rattle-like as he droned the melodies over and over. The words were indistinguishable to me. The sounds were ancient and guttural, their mesmerizing effect startling. Within moments, the cathedral ceiling of the cave began to vibrate. The shadows cast by the fire leapt upon the giant figures painted inside the cave walls. Huge red and black anthropomorphs, definitely not human. They loomed with increasing intensity until I felt my body lowering involuntarily. I sat curled up in a ball near the fire and felt the need to crawl to my blanket. The sounds began to reverberate as I made my way on my hands and knees. When I reached my bedding, I wrapped the blanket around me like a cocoon and closed my eyes, hoping to decrease the pounding in my head. Everything began to spin. I tried opening my eyes again, but that made the whirling worse. Soon I felt the heavy weight of slumber coming upon me. The vibrating echoes were becoming almost intolerable. Shortly afterwards, I don't know how. I seemed to have fallen into a deep sleep. I awoke in my energy body without any feeling of dizziness. Don Juan was singing at the fire, but the effect was minimized. It was as though the sound had been turned down. Everything seemed to be moving in slow motion. Even the flames stood still for seconds at a time. I had the strong desire to walk outside. As I passed by the fire, I could see a glint in Don Juan's eyes. They were rolled up and back, beneath his slightly parted lids. I easily made my way through the entrance and took a deep breath of the fresh night air. I looked up into the cloudless, moonless sky. Somehow it was still luminous, as though it were lit from behind. I noticed then a comet trailing across it. That was odd. I wasn't aware of any comets in the area. Then I spied a massive shadowy figure on the desert floor. At first it appeared perhaps to be a gigantic carden cactus, but on closer inspection, the figure seemed to be moving. I inched a little closer still, and then I paused. Suddenly I heard the sound of far-off thunder, and that stopped me dead in my tracks. I realized that I was not looking at a cactus. What I saw was alive, and yet it did not seem to be living as we know it. The creature, whatever it was, turned and saw me standing outside the cave. I could not run. The being began to move closer. One would have expected it to lumber along on account of its size, but it gracefully avoided bushes as it passed. I was enthralled. There was a ripple effect, like a wake or a flowing cape that followed and surrounded the being. It seemed to be negotiating a large serpent-like tail, yet it moved upright on two legs. The being was easily twice my size. The fire from the cave cast light upon it when it came close enough. I drew in a deep breath. I was gazing at a fully intelligent countenance. The eyes were burning. Its head was topped with three horns. One was positioned at the crown of the forehead, and the other two were at the sides of the head, above the ears. The creature appeared to be red and black, like the gigantic figures painted on the inside walls of the cave and all around the entrance. I thought perhaps I might be seeing the guardian of the powers of this place in dreaming. Then the being looked me full in the face, lowering its head to observe my eyes in the night. The features were beautiful, symmetrical, and somehow classical. I realized that this was a creature far more evolved and sophisticated than I. It was easy to observe from the face, horns, and body that this being maintained a balance between masculine and feminine, a perfect hermaphrodite, and that it was not of this world. I began to wonder if I was observing a deity of some sort. There were aspects of it that appeared almost human-like. The face, the arms and legs, and graceful torso. Yet it was beyond this. The massiveness, the coloration, and the horns were definitely representing something far outside our evolutionary uses of sexual and life force energies. The comet sputtered overhead, and luminous rainbow sparks fell everywhere from it, firing up the sky and enabling an almost daylight view of the being that stood before me. The creature did not speak, but pointed instead to the trailing comet with a long index finger of its right hand. Then it reached out and touched a place inside my chest with the same finger. As it did so, I felt something explode and reconfigure within me. My eyes burned and were completely absorbed in a sensation of light. I heard from that light another thunderclap and awakened inside my blanket roll. The light of the rising sun was inching its way through the cave opening. The fire was now just a pile of friendly, smoldering ashes. And Don Juan sat just as I had seen him, looking surprisingly rested and at peace, considering that he had been tending the blaze all night. After covering the ashes with sand to make sure that they were extinguished, Don Juan opened some packages of dried apricots and dates. I took one of the gourds of water, and we sat outside the cave to enjoy our breakfast. The desert morning was fresh and beautiful. The early sun shone upon the smooth stone surfaces, fading them to white and lightening the color of the painted giants to shades of earthen pink and pastel gray, rather than red and black. These figures are an accurate representation of what I saw in dreaming last night, I commented as I took them in for the first time in full daylight. They were not painted by one artist or even by one group of people, but rather by many who have come here over thousands of years and have all seen more or less the same thing, Don Juan told me. I looked at the figures directly across from us and realized that even the horned head was accurately represented from various different artistic perspectives. What was it that I dreamed, Don Juan? At first, I thought that I might be seeing the guardian of this place, but later I came to feel that it was something else entirely. That being is beyond this world and beyond this life and death, Don Juan said. It belongs somewhere outside humanity, and yet, as you saw, it has human-like qualities and masculine and feminine energy. Remember that I told you that there are energies that exceed the human or earthly capacity to hold them. They are transformational energies outside of this realm. Sometimes the body encounters them. That is a sign that one is headed for something beyond all this. Don Juan gestured around at the environment surrounding us. Just as the power of your energy body may exceed the ability of your physical body to hold it, as you experienced last night in the cave when your energy body began to emerge and your physical body had to sleep, so does the energy body at times exceed the capability of the earth to contain it within the earthly domains. Tell me, he said, did the beam touch you in any way? Anywhere at all? Yes, it touched my chest, near the heart, I answered him, somewhat astonished that he knew to ask this. That is most significant, he said, nodding to himself. You see, that being imparts the possibility for transformation outside of this human drama we call life and death. This requires an energy body, of course, and you had to be able to rouse yours and meet the being on its own terms. What happened is that it planted a portion of its own energy within you, something that you will become when you emerge from your luminous cocoon. I was speechless. Have other peoples seen this being, Don Juan? Or is it something peculiar to the scene of desert shamans? I'm not sure about peoples from other lands, though I sense that perhaps some might have seen the being in a similar or perhaps a different form, he said, taking some time to contemplate my question. I do know that other native cultures have seen it. The Nawa have seen it, and Chan, who is Maya, has also seen it. The being is very selective, however. It seems that one must have developed the energy double in order to be given the view of it, or the opportunity to be in its presence. Otherwise, one will misunderstand it. Does it have a name? I asked. To know the name of something means that you have the power to call it at will. That being would never allow such a thing. It bestows its energy, you see. I like to think of it as a being who goes beyond the energy of death by conveying the possibility of a transformation that exceeds it. That is how I see it. Perhaps you could call it the Death Defier. Practice 21. Dreaming Death. 1. This is a dreaming task transmitted by the energy of the Death Defier as seen by desert shamans. It is used to practice for the moment of death. 2. This dream must be allowed to occur. It cannot be forced. One enters into a state of dreaming and allows the dream to become that of one's own death, not in a prophetic sense, but rather simply as practice. The death process may be activated in the dream by a being outside of oneself, or one's own energy body may initiate the practice. Once the practitioner has sufficient control and awareness of what is being undertaken. 3. Allow the death to occur, dreaming your way through the process rather than becoming frightened and waking up. This second response is most common, as it is an instinctive one engendered out of fear. However, it may be overcome. 4. Allow total nothingness to occur without permitting any interruption of your dreaming awareness. If an interruption is unavoidable, do not stay with it any longer than necessary. Become the nothingness. Then begin to reconfigure your awareness, cleansed and more essential than the prior configuration. Do not degenerate into ordinary dreams or into dreams of ego. 5. Rather, strive to bring the essential awareness back with you into the waking world in simple, silent, empty humility. Focus upon peace. Chapter 22. The Eagle. During the afternoon while Don Juan was resting, I took a walk around the area. There were several trails leading to other mural sites, the most memorable of which was a stone panel covered with large, black open-winged flying creatures that were perhaps intended to be eagles. In examining the figures, it seemed that each was portraying the same thing, though the artists had deliberately avoided depicting the head of the creature, and so it was impossible for me to be certain what was being represented without Don Juan's presence. Still, for some unknown reason, perhaps due to the wingspan and the shape, I sensed that they all depicted the same form of eagle. I didn't stray too far from the cave, since Don Juan had given me very specific instructions about returning before twilight. On the way back, I collected some firewood, and by the time I reached the muralized cave, the sun had just set. Don Juan was preparing the fire circle as he had done the night before. Settling into my spot within the open chamber, I wondered what the night and dreaming would hold, but I silenced these thoughts. Don Juan's instructions had been to intend dreaming and nothing more. Once the sky was black and the fire was burning brightly, Don Juan commenced his chanting again. The words, the rhythms, and the melodies were different from the previous night, but that was all I was able to discern. One of his chants included an occasional high-pitched shriek, which sent chills through my body. Each cry was then accompanied by something that he cast into the fire. I could not see what this was, but whatever he cast into the fire caused it to leap up at his words. I held on to my waking awareness longer this second night, but after a time I began to notice shadows hovering and swirling on the roof of the cave. Observing them made me extremely dizzy, and the only way to stop the sensation was to lie down on my blanket and close my eyes. Once I had done so, the sounds of the fire seemed to amplify until I felt that the blaze would swallow and burn me whole. At that point, I became engulfed in warmth and began to drift off to sleep. When I awakened into dreaming, my energy body was on the roof of the cave, looking down upon my sleeping body. From above, I could clearly see Don Juan's body sitting by the fire, casting sticks into it from time to time. I could not, however, hear any singing, although his lips appeared to be moving. I scuttled across the cave ceiling like a spider, and when I reached the entrance, my energy body lowered itself on a silvery thread, sliding down gently until I was near enough to the ground to focus upon it from the perspective of my normal height. I patted my arms with my hands. I seemed to be myself. How I had become so tiny for a moment was a mystery to me, but it had enabled me to sneak along the cave roof, seemingly unnoticed, and to travel above the blazing fire without being singed. Now that I was standing on the ground outside the cave, I turned back to look inside. A huge black shadow, such as those I had seen hovering above me earlier during the night, swooped down at that very moment to block the entrance so that I could hardly make out the interior features and fire within. I recoiled when I realized that the shadow was palpable, the consistency of a dense black gas. There seemed to be one spot that was burning within the blackness. I thought to myself that I was witnessing the birth of a new galaxy. Then the spot became a huge yellow eye that was peering at me from the center of a black aquiline head. The wingspan at its base became discernible and stretched into infinity. I was gazing into the center of the universe. Somehow the universe became a black eagle, and the eagle a universe. It fluctuated over and over between these two views. Suddenly I was burned with its singular yellow-white hot core at a temperature I would have thought inconceivable. I was reduced to a tiny pile of golden dust. The eagle peered at the pile of dust. Its eye became so large that it encompassed my entire scope, the totality of my vision. The eagle then selected one golden speck with its beak from the pile of golden dust that I was, and flew off with it, revealing the illuminated entrance to the cave as it moved off. My awareness reconfigured as soon as the eagle had departed. Had Don Juan not been within the cave, and had he not admonished me about returning to it, I might not have been interested in doing so. Such is the daring boldness of my energy body. I felt a clean break from my sleeping body. Still, I knew that the transformational cycle was not yet complete. Out of respect for what we were both endeavoring and becoming, I had to return. Returning, however, was not as easy a matter as I at first might have thought. I had changed forms so many times that it was not possible to backtrack and become what I had been. In order to approach my body again, I had to give up being the little pile of gold dust and become just pure nothingness. Only in that form could I float through the cave, past the fire, and hover over the sleeping body that I came to reclaim as myself. When I awakened in the morning, I saw Don Juan sifting sand through his fingers onto the remaining ashes, to be sure that the fire was out. I lay in my blanket and looked up at the roof of the cave. The morning light seemed cold in comparison to the fires I had experienced in dreaming. I rolled up more inside my blanket and turned to lie on my right side so that I could look easily out of the mouth of the cave. Breathing the air of the new day began to revive me. The dawn could not betray the texture of what had been present during the night. After eating some dried meat outside the cave and splashing our faces with a little water from one of the gourds, Don Juan and I walked along the trail that led to the muralized, headless eagles. Having experienced the energy in dreaming, I now understood why the heads had not been represented. We sat down with our backs against smooth boulders so that we could talk about the past night. Can you give me some guidelines that can help me to understand what happened to me last night, Don Juan? I asked him once we were seated comfortably in the mild light of the sun. You saw what we see. That is all I can tell you, really, he said to me. The eagle is a way of perceiving the scrutinizing force that tests the substance of the universe for incorruptibility. Everything is seen by the keen eye of the eagle. It misses nothing, no matter how seemingly small or insignificant. Normally, this force is called to test our being at the moment of our death, but a powerful shaman can call it to come earlier. This is done as a means of preparing. When the scrutinizing force is applied at the moment of our death, it consumes all life force and awareness that is attached to illusion. For many human beings, that means everything they've got. The eagle tests for incorruptible energy with the flames that forged creation. So whatever cannot stand up to a burn of that magnitude is vaporized, gone. He snapped his fingers. The eagle will not kill, though, he continued after a dramatic interlude. Death must come first. So if the shaman succeeds in calling the eagle prior to physical death by offering a shamanic death, then it is possible to see how the eagle will treat the offering. If the offering is rejected, if the energy is corruptible, nothing will remain of the shaman's power. If, however, the offering is accepted, if something survives the flames from the eye of the eagle, then it will take a tiny sample of that and fly off in order to seed it somewhere else. That is the accord ancient shamans struck with this energy. There is very little that can endure such a test. Only gold survives a furnace that hot to emerge uninjured and pure. That is what your dream was all about. My fingers flew to my lips as I drew a deep breath in realization. You passed, Don Juan said to me, looking fixedly into my eyes. You were reduced to your essence. There was something in your awareness and life force that had the ability to stand the scrutiny. Gold yields purity under heat and pressure, you see. Congratulations. And yet I had to give up the gold in order to return to the cave, I told him, musing over the paradox. Exactly. The offer is a simple and yet a seemingly impossible one. At death, one must give back everything that one has been given, and more besides, in the form of thanks, and still have more than one started with. Only then may we pass the eagle. It is not possible to cheat. The offer must be the real magic, and that is to be able to make something from nothing. For that something to become incorruptible, and for that incorruptible something to become incorruptibly nothing. I was taken aback by the poetic elegance of the magical language of energy. Nothing in my life, but life itself and the love of it, could possibly have prepared me for such a simple truth. I asked Don Juan if I could spend some time alone at the site to voice my thanks. He understood completely and walked back to the cave to have a rest, leaving me there alone in what was becoming a beautiful mid-morning. As he departed, he put his hand approvingly on my shoulder, and then I found myself in solitude, surrounded by the muralized flights of large, headless, black eagles. I wondered how many shamans before me had painted these visions upon stone in order to leave their thanks at the spot. I wondered at the encounters they might have had and at their possible triumphs or laments. It was not really possible for me to speak my gratitude to the eagle, to life and to creation with words, but I was able to sing my medicine songs of thanks, songs that I had acquired through my long journeys in dreaming and in ceremony. After I had finished singing, I noticed one solitary golden eagle soaring in the skies above. It was later joined by another, and that let me know that my prayers of thanks had been heard. Practice 22. Heart Offering. 1. There is a moving meditation which may be undertaken in part as a preparation for offering to the eagle. It is called the heart offering and was practiced by the ancient Maya and Toltec. This movement is also reminiscent of the sun dance offering practiced among the native peoples of the plains. 2. Expanding the abdomen on the inhale, one leans back as far as possible, expanding the arms to embrace the burning sun. The neck is completely relaxed. The head hangs back limp with the eyes open, gazing into the top of the head. The arms are limp, and yet they maintain the expanded embrace. The back is bent backwards. The legs are separated more than shoulder width apart, rooting firmly into the earth, with the knees slightly bent. 3. Remain in this position and stretch into it fully, holding the breath within the body. Give your body over to it entirely, offering every ounce of your being and bearing the heart within your chest to the blazing sun overhead. 4. Hold this position until your chest burns and you feel the heart energy center expanding with light and heat. Keep holding until you feel that you are about to lose consciousness. Visualize the eagle taking a bite of your heart at this moment. 5. Now rise erect, bringing your arms over your head. Bow deeply, keeping the arms overhead and letting them gracefully follow you downward. Profoundly exhale as you bow down, keeping your legs straight, stretching your spine and touching the ground with your palms. Release every bit of breath and self until you are completely empty. Stay with the bow and exhale a little longer, contracting the abdomen all the way in on the exhale until there is nothing left of you but pure nothingness. 6. Stand erect, inhale, and give thanks, bringing your arms to your chest and placing your palms together in a prayerful position over your heart. 7. Know that each time you offer, you purify. Concentrate on incorruptible love when you practice. Do not think of yourself. Rather be thankful that you have something to give. Give everything to the eagle. Return everything you have received without bitterness or selfishness. Magnify what you have received by giving thanks for it as you return your utmost all in offering.